through it, we'll talk about we'll talk about electrical power generation around about gigawatt per allocated area, per call area, if you like. So let's moving on now, Bill. So what we talked about in the way of Bill referencing about a gathering stations, then we're looking at, as we go left to right, in order to get about a gigawatt, we're going to need something like 15 megawatt wind turbines to produce this power. So it's not a small number, but there's a lot there. And obviously, if we go down from 15 to 12 to 10, we're going to need more out there. And then we've got to get the energy, the electricity from the wind turbines to the fixed platform substation you see on the right, and then moving down. I'll explain why it's a fixed platform as we go forward. So we're going to be having, in my view, multiple infield gathering systems for the electricity, which then means multiple cables. If we have, for example, 16 turbines and 16 power cables, sorry, 67 turbines and power cables flowing into the substation, that's going to be a right mess on the seabed, and no one's going to be wanting to consider that. So we've got to be looking at ways of reducing the number of power cables that go into the substation, and then depending on the distance may depend on how we gather and configure all of this stuff. So let's keep on talking then as we go forward. Something that was very important in my previous work was understanding where we are with technology, the development status. And I've picked up this one from ABS because it's in public domain. But here they talk about technology qualification planning. And you'll see in there the technology stages, feasibility, concept, prototype, system, operational. When we're talking about stuff that's in feasibility, it's more of a case of what's in the universities now. That's going to need a lot of development work to take it into prime time. Concept verification, there we're looking at perhaps small scale models, small scale equipment, possibly with new companies, and that's all great stuff, but it's not far enough along the line for what we're talking about here. We need to be looking at equipment that is really reached the prototype stage, where we're putting equipment out offshore, where we're putting it in full-scale equipment in docks and the like. So that's the stage that I feel comfortable with within a project of this timeline. So, and then once we move into system integration, which is where systems are being designed to be built, and then equipment is operational. So it's these last three technology items that I'm particularly interested, because if we're moving forward, we've got to make sure we have the technology available to give us first electricity later in the 2020s, and that's what we're talking about now. So everything I'll talk about will be within these prototype stages, and like I said, going after 1 and 2 at this stage, it's a long stretch. So I don't want to go there for now. So let's move on, please. So the wind turbines. Here we see Siemens Gamesa turbine. And you can get, the companies that are developing these, Siemens, GE, Vestas, all absolutely superb organizations, and they are moving forward. And they're now starting to be selling the 15 megawatt units. We got to remember about the spacing. You can't just put them too close. So what I'm seeing, I saw one report where they were talking about the wind turbines for this part of the world being about 6 blade diameters away from each other when it's parallel, when the line's at right angles to the wind, so side by side facing the wind. But then behind them, I've seen references to something like 10 blade diameters behind them. So we're looking at a fairly large area here. And if we look at the spacings for the 15 megawatt, which is something like 240 meters blade diameter, we're looking at spacing between 1.4 and 2.2, 2.4 kilometers. So we're talking big distances here. And you've got to remember that as we go forward in the waters that we're going with. They're not packed tightly together. So moving on. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of companies that I see doing very well. Principal Power, that you know from just down the coast from you in California, they seem to be doing very well in what they're doing. San Francisco Bay, you can read the notes, but they've got a number of prototypes at one stage or another that are being built in Europe, primarily, one port or another. And so now they're moving forward and they're doing a great job here. Now these turbines here are purely wind turbines. There are other designs of turbines which also have wave power gathering as well. Because I see from what I'm reading, although I've never been up to your coast, I must admit, from what I'm reading, I see you from northwest. That's primarily where your wind comes from.
Yeah.
And from what I'm seeing there, you're also getting the waves in that direction, the waves coming in. So you've got the opportunity for good wind and good waves. And there's a company called Technip FMC that is proposing a wind turbine, and they're working with a company in Scotland called Bombora, which are proposing wave power units as well. So what they're proposing, Technip, is a wind turbine plus wave power generation on the same unit. So I think you need to keep your minds open here as you move forward. So moving on to the next one. Here we have, this is another company that I'm very familiar with from my previous work, a company called SBM, single buoy moorings. And they've got a great track record in the Gulf of Mexico for providing tension leg platforms, TLPs. And you see on the left, the middle group of four, they're tension leg platforms that TLP have provided. And what they're doing is using a modified version of that technology for the tension leg wind turbine. And if you go on to the next slide, please. So when we start looking at these, now, I don't know if you should see my hands, yes. With semi-submersibles, you're getting a mooring pattern that's coming out like that. So we'll talk more about moorings later if we get the chance. But with TLPs, the moorings are like that. And so it provides you an alternative way of mooring. And when you look at your seabed, it may be that the semi-submersibles with that mooring is best, or you may find you need to move that shape of mooring. So you got to keep these minds open. And SBM are moving forward. They have a project going in shortly in south of France, off Marseille, as you see from the second on the left. And so they're moving forward with their schedules there. So that's something to watch as well. Just keeping your mind open into what systems are out there. Okay. Moving forward, now this is an area that I found very restricted information online, and it builds on what Bill had showed you earlier. What you're going to be having in order to reduce the number of cables that come into the fixed substation, then you've got to start linking these wind turbines together. And there's different designs. You could go for a mid-water gathering system as shown on the top, or you can bring the power cables down to the seabed and link together that way. I'm more comfortable with bringing to the seabed because that's what I'm familiar with, but I see other companies are moving forward with the mid-water arrays. And I think the selection is going to be made depending on the water depth and the environmental conditions, and also what guarantees you can get from the cable suppliers. So for my mind, there's no fixed, we can't fix that until much later. There's something to note also, if you see on my notes on the left, maximum dynamic cables are restricted to 85 megawatts with current technology. There's a floating production platform off the northern coast of Norway, which has a cable that was designed, supplied from a company called ABB, which is now NKT, and that's 85 megawatts. And that's the biggest that I know that's gone in. I know there's other companies besides what is now NKT working on these inter-array cables. Nexans, who else? And a couple of others there. So I don't think we're going to have trouble getting the inter-array cable up to the 85 megawatts, which allows us, for example, with 15 megawatt turbines, we could produce perhaps 5 of them in row and still keeping within the 85, which is field proven. The problem, though, comes when you want to get the power from a number of these units. So if you wanted to join, if all you want to do is run an 85 megawatt cable into the main transformer, the main substation, then that's fine. If, however, that is no longer practical and you need to combine more power cables together to go for a smaller number of cables or to boost the voltage to give you better transmission distance, then you need to be thinking about installing some sort of a substation, a smaller substation out there. And people are proposing floating substations. And I see that, but I'm concerned about the technology status for this export cable, where you're combining several 85s together. I am not seeing that technology in public domain, so I'm concerned there. So what it's leading me towards is to go for seabed gathering. And we can talk more about this later, but this is you see on the bottom of these 3 pictures where I talk about a seabed transformer. Here, I see technology that's in oil and gas that's good for 3,000 meters. And it's reconfigured slightly. And then lo and behold, you've got a seabed transformer where you can gather multiple 85 megawatt cables together and then boost up the voltage and boost up the power and have those running to a shore fixed substation. I've gone for, on the right hand side there, the fixed platform substation. And the reason for that is that I know the technology is currently commercially available for the power cables going into a fixed substation. You put them up pipes called J-tubes, and you pull them in onto the platform and do your terminations there. And this is what's being done in Europe, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, it's not so easy where you are, but I think you've really got to be thinking about moving your main distribution transformer substation to where it's a fixed platform. And that means that there will only be very few of these, but they fit in with the figure that we showed right at the beginning. Okay, so let's move on. So here we have seabed gathering system. This is a schematic I've got from Siemens, as you see, Siemens Energy. They're pushing this, and the next the next one up from this is going to be available next year. And whether you talk to Siemens, ABB, Baker Hughes, they're all proposing this technology as a way of gathering multiple turbines into a small number of cables to go for longer distances. And when I've looked at what I see up and down the coast of Oregon, where you've got, I can see there being an opportunity for this sort of gathering system as you get to a suitable piece of seabed, that you'll feel comfortable putting a number of turbines in. If you can't put a large number in, then you could use this technology for a smaller group and then having a power cable going either to the beach or to a shallow water gathering station. I'd sent you an excellent set of information from BOEM, which talked about the seabed up and down Oregon and into California and the like. And last few days ago, BOEM gave an excellent talk talking about the fishing up and down the coast. And all of this needs to be taken into account. The seabed, the fishing, and all the other activities, the marine life, one sort or another. And when you do that, you'll see opportunities that I think for putting in smaller stations sooner rather than later in order to provide small offshore stations. And doing that will also help you build up your supply chain. So there's interesting topics on that one. So moving on now, once again, to be proving the technology, this shows a photograph from Global Marine with the Norman Clipper. And this looks as though it's geared up for wind, the fixed wind, but you'll see that the carousel midships for the cables, and this may be good for arrays, cables, but the main export might be a bigger ship. But all of this is field proven. And when you look at what companies like Nexans, NKT, Prysmian, JDR cables have got, all of this is commercially available for stations that have little motion. We don't have, if they're not moving too much, then these work great. So going on. So here's a substation. This is in the North Sea at the moment in Europe. They're putting in 1,000 megawatts, a gigawatt, weighing about 3,000 tons. But they also see these are unmanned operations. They can be supported on steel or concrete, which could help things in construction side. But they're working now in Europe on 2 gigawatt units of these. So they're getting bigger, and these fit into the larger distribution substations. Okay, Bill. So this is what I was suggesting to go forward with, because there's a lot of stuff here that is from different offshore technologies than you're used to, and there's a lot of stuff to be learned here. And what we talked about is perhaps assembling an interdisciplinary advisory team to discuss this further, which presumably this is what we're talking about with this POTS group. And then you may want to try and source funds to bring in an engineering company to help lay this out more so you understand it better, to go through it, what this means, if you can identify some particular areas that you're interested in. What might it look like? How might it all come together? What might it cost? And that could then form a way to go forward. And then remembering, of course, the extensive discussions I had with Eric, understand the onshore reception locations and how it can all be built together and come together here. Okay. As you go forward, one of the things you're going to need is going to be design basis. And and this just goes through some of the items that's going to be on it. Somebody's got to pull all this together, and it's not an insignificant exercise here. The environmental conditions, wind, wave, and current, marine life, fishing, shipping of one sort or another, the bird life, the seabed conditions, geophysical, geotechnical, potential power landing sites, local environmental views, state and federal requirements. And then this is going to be expanded as you move forward. But also, you've got to make notes of the applicable codes, standards, regulations, and that you're going to find there's gaps as you go forward. So these are going to be identified as you work forward, and then a plan needs to be put into place how you're going to fill the gaps that you've got here. So how are we doing, Bill? Bill?
Steve, you have 5 more minutes on the schedule, or you can wrap up whenever you'd like.
Well, I'm just looking at my time. It's 16 minutes past, so I'm coming to the end of what I was going to say. So next one would be pretty well the wrap up.
It looks like, there you go.
Oh, good one. Yes. Oh no, back. Technology. I talked about the different technologies. As you're moving forward with all of this, you need to understand where you are with technology. What are the alternative potential technologies? Where do they stand with the suppliers? What are the current capabilities and future plans? This is not the same as what's being done in Europe. Europe has got a different set of environmental conditions. What's being done in Europe is shallower water. They can put in fixed platforms easy. The water depths are a lot less than here. The wind comes in all different directions, so they can't orientate the wind farm in a particular way. So you've got differences here which you need to understand. You've got to understand the technology qualification levels in order to, as you're looking at the qualifications. And even though technology might be said to be field proven, when you get into it, there will be gaps. And those gaps need to be identified and then closure plans developed. Having got all your components together, then you've got to understand how each of the selected items will be integrated together as an integrated solution. Because just having a pile of bits does not mean you've got an integrated solution. Same as when you design and build a car. You get your carburetor, you got your wheels, the fuel tank, seats. If these aren't fitted together properly, you can't go anywhere. It's the same here. Then, like I say, you've got to develop once you understand the gaps, you need your closure plan with a schedule and cost estimate for your preferred suppliers. So there's an awful lot of work here. This is not an insignificant exercise to move forward here. There's an awful lot of work, and it all needs to be planned out accordingly. So just going on then to the final one. So a big thank you to everyone. Siemens, Principal Power, SBM, Siemens Energy, Seaway 7, Global Marine, all helped with the pictures and diagrams that I'd had. And once again, to all those at POET and others within the Society for Underwater Technology who are supporting this initiative. I'm not sure if that email address works, but you've got, when we have the meeting distributions, you've got my personal email if there's anything you'd like to discuss in particular. So that's what I was going to say. I went through it rather quickly, and I probably spoke, at least to some of you, on things that you may not have had experience with. But as I've been through this and I've researched it more in the last couple of months, I think everything here is doable. Everything that you're talking about for this can be done. I don't see the technology gaps. What I see is the work necessary in selecting your suppliers, I see the work necessary to sit down with them and go through what they've got, how it would fit in, and find out what the gaps are. And there's a fantastic opportunity here to move forward, reasonably positively here, and have us be able to design, build, and install at least one or even multiple systems up and down the coast of Oregon. So with that, that's what I was going to say.
Well, great. Thanks, Steve. We've got a few minutes on the agenda for some reactions or questions, discussion on this. If anyone wants to do that, unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment if you'd like. We have anybody? No,
You're all quiet. This is what I got from the last time I gave the talk.
I'll start this. This is Jason. Thank you for that, Steve. That's that was interesting for the second time. And we know that this is intended as a preliminary sketch of the fundamental components that would go into some sort of at-sea shared transmission solution. So it's important to keep in mind that I think we all agree you have to conceive of a basic concept of what it is that we're proposing in a conceptual sense in order to drive the conversation forward. I think several of the things that you brought up today, Steve, regarding the current state of the turbines, the orientation, the different floating platform technologies, all of that is in motion. New companies are arising regularly. There are several different variations, all of which, as I learned from Steve, emerged from the oil and gas sector, whether it's TL potential leg platforms or semi-submersibles, barges. This technology has been around for 20, 30, 40 years, used in depths up to 3,000 meters. So that was very encouraging for me to work with Steve through this the first time and understand the background of the oil and gas sector and the fact that everything we're doing in the offshore wind sector, in a sense, is building on that technology and in some sense marrying the oil and gas platform components with the existing bottom-mounted turbine components, the tower and turbines that are being marinized for at-sea deployment and growing ever larger all the time. As he mentioned, we're at 15 megawatt turbines, and from my understanding, there's no reason why that's going to stop. We'll likely see ever larger turbines, at least for the foreseeable future. So I want to open this up and make sure that folks have opportunity to ask questions, and I think importantly, today is not the intent here is not to fully digest the technologies that undergird transmission solutions. It is really to help us understand that as an organization, as a group, as a forum, we are brainstorming how we advance the conversation about transmission solutions for offshore wind. How do we maximize the amount of offshore wind that can be developed in that region? And it seemed to the core group that convened around this over the last 2 or 3 months that a good place to start was conceiving of what a solution would look like, and then begin to parse that and to vet the various components and the viability, and bring together the larger group that's here today to help lay out a pathway. How do we get from where we are today to the point where transmission planners, utility owners, merchant transmission developers, and the other essential parties who may view all this with a fair amount of skepticism actually begin to believe that this is a good idea? And that's really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do. So let me stop there and see if I oiled your gears a little bit. Let's see if you got any ideas on how we move forward.
I've got a question, Jason. This is Craig Gannett. So Steve, thank you for that presentation. I have a really basic question. The accepted wisdom, as I understand it, is that West Coast offshore wind is at a distinct disadvantage relative to East Coast offshore wind because the continental shelf falls off so much more precipitously on the West Coast. Are you saying that with this floating turbine technology that is now a myth, that there is no West Coast disadvantage in terms of either feasibility or cost, or are we still at something of a disadvantage on the West Coast?
It's a disadvantage in a number of areas. What they're doing on the East Coast is relatively shallow water. And they're starting to put in the bottom founded wind turbines, and the water depth is, I say, relatively shallow. The interconnections is very much based a lot from the learnings in Europe. And so the companies that are operating there are able to use European skills. They're also able to design and build substructures in around the Gulf of Mexico. The last ones were from Louisiana. Sail them around relatively easy around Florida, up there. There's a lot of ports up there, so they're building up the supply chain, and it seems to be a lot easier to get the offshore turbines fed into the onshore electrical gathering system. On the West Coast, you have the deeper water. It seems to me as if you're going to have more of a problem with supply chain, getting everything lined up there, because the number of ports available to you is fewer. There's going to be more, you may well need more port infrastructure. The costs are certainly going to be different. And we're moving more towards leading edge technology for these deep water opportunities. So yes, you are disadvantaged. It's going to cost more, but it's still, as far as I can see, technically doable. And until somebody sharpens their pencil and starts to work these designs and numbers, you're not really going to understand properly how these two properly compare. Does that answer your question, Craig?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll jump in there. So Craig, you've opened a Pandora's box there, and Steve raised several issues that are very relevant. Let me say this: there are so many aspects, so many facets of this conversation that are relevant. And if you want to chat about infrastructure, port capabilities, supply chain, workforce development, environmental effects, on down energy markets, et cetera, we can have that conversation. I know, for example, there is a DOE funded supply chain assessment thing that is underway or starting right about now. NREL's part of that, DNV, Business Network for Offshore Wind. We just met with DOE this week about how that plays out on the West Coast. Port infrastructure, again, money being thrown at that, both by the state of California, by Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. But each one of these things is a clear challenge that will require some concerted effort to address. So we can chat about those things. And I'd say that let's keep our eye on the challenge that this group is trying to deal with specifically, which is transmission. How are we going to collectively wrap our brains around how to break or fix the transmission conundrum that we have that would open up literally tens of gigawatts of high capacity offshore wind development in the 60% plus range? How are we going to do that? That's what this group is convened here to try to figure out.
Got it. Thanks. But by the way, my apologies, my camera is not functioning.
Well, you got a great picture, Craig. I know what you look like. So.
All right. So with that, we have 30 minutes left to do our around the room introductions. I think we should get started on that. So this part of it, we're just going to go around the room, and everyone's going to have a chance to just introduce themselves, and also just an opportunity to say, to be frank, whatever it is you'd like to mention to our group here about, you know, where you see your involvement and where you might like to, you know, see this go, or we can hold those parts off about how we actually start to steer. The steering committee actually starts to do the steering. Doesn't have to start right this second, but we'll get there when we get there. So I've got a list here. I'll go down. This is a Zoom generated list that showed up in my pane. Absolutely no order to this at all. So we'll just go around, starting with Fred Hewitt.
Hi, everybody. Fred Hewitt. I'm actually here in Portland, although that's a picture of Astoria behind me. With the Northwest Energy Coalition, we represent about 100 organizations in the Northwest, ranging from environmental groups, community groups, renewable developers, energy efficiency, utilities, local governments. Been around for a long time. We focus on promoting clean energy development in the Northwest and also protection of fish and wildlife affected by energy development, particularly in the Columbia River hydro system. I'm actually involved in a lot more than just the Northwest states. I work a lot in Western issues, particularly at the Western Electricity Coordinating Council. Also have colleagues in California, so I'm pretty, lined up with what's happening down there as much as anybody can be at this distance. There's no way to keep up with everything in California. One aspect of importance there, of course, is that California, as was Jason mentioned at the beginning, is really moving fast now in offshore wind development. They have a couple of call areas, including the Humboldt area, and a lot of research that's been done. I hope we'll be able to hear from about that in the future, that I think helps us frame the issues for us. In addition, one of the key things I'm focusing on is the potential for, and there are various potential reasons that this might not happen, including cost and just feasibility, but the ability to connect from the Northwest to California through the offshore wind region, not only to pick up the wind and potentially send it bidirectionally to either region, but also to provide an alternative pathway for transmission flows generally. About a month and a half ago, the bootleg fire grew up in Southern Oregon on the east side. And although it wasn't, it was very large as fires go, almost 500,000 acres before it was contained. It didn't affect all that much of the transmission running through that area, but it affected it enough that all three of the AC intertie transmission lines shut down for protection reasons and stayed offline for several days. In addition, half of the DC intertie was derated to protect the system. This is not the first time there's been an interruption due to wildfire, but it came at a time, unlike previous instances, where California was having a pretty hot time, and they came very close to having outages. Fortunately, for a lot of reasons and a lot of work that's been done since the outages that did happen last year, the lights stayed on, but it was a near miss. And that really brings home the need for more interregional transmission to bypass or to supplement what we've already got, in addition to the potential for increased flows in both directions. So I'm highlighting this because I think the reliability aspect in each region, both California and Oregon, of adding offshore wind is a factor, and the potential for interregional reliability from offshore transmission and wind is also something we should consider, realizing that there are some significant obstacles to that. So I just thought I'd say that because that's one of the things that's really driving my interest here.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I'm sorry, Fred.
Bill, can I say something real quick?
Sure can.
100% on that, and for those, I realize as I've been sitting here this whole time, there's so much that could have been said about what's happening in this sector and all the various issues that they keep coming to me. But Fred is absolutely right. We are definitely thinking about this, not just in terms of facilitating offshore wind, but also that interstate connectivity. There's clearly a whole nother aspect of this that's valuable above and beyond just facilitating offshore wind. It's as important and I appreciate Fred bringing that up. And I'll just say one other thing, which is there is a subsea transmission route being proposed right now, and maybe some of the folks on the call know, hopefully know a lot more about it than I do, which I think is called the TREDS project, Three Rivers Energy Development something, TRED project, taking power from the Diablo Canyon region or Morro Bay region down to, I think, LA, again, to move large amounts of power, again, addressing issues of fire, existing terrestrial constraints on transmission. When we talk about this topic, we love to finish by saying, and by the way, subsea cables don't burn. So it's clearly an extremely relevant issue and will remain so for the foreseeable future.
Thanks, Jason. And thanks, Fred. Fred, you nailed the exact 3-minute target we have, so we can fit everyone in. So if we can try and keep our comments to 3 minutes. So the next one on my list here is Jason Eisdorf.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let me see if I can undo my picture. Well, I'm not sure I can. Jason Eisdorfer, for consultant currently, former director and chief of staff of the program staff at the Oregon Public Utility Commission, former climate change strategist at BPA, and former attorney for the Citizens Utility Board. Currently, my clients include NGOs working on energy efficiency, a number of cities, the Regulatory Assistance Project, and one client is a development company out of Ireland who is interested in offshore wind, but I'm not representing them in this capacity. So, doing the this is offshore wind is going to happen, and in my mind, it's either going to happen in a organized fashion or in a less organized gold rush kind of way. And this is one of those situations where I'll start myself there, where we have an opportunity to test the business case, to test the public policy case for a joint subsea transmission line that can ultimately be significantly more efficient than a project by project interconnection with terrestrial transmission. Now, there may be some who actually see that as a competitive advantage. The first ones in with lease may not actually be interested in this. I think there is an interesting public policy convincing that we may need to do that. This is worth doing. And I think Steve's presentation was really good and talked about all those technical and engineering issues, which obviously, if those all come together, we don't go very far. But I think the public policy issues surrounding this are equally as important and equally strong. Fred started touching on some of those. So I just think this is a really worthwhile conversation. I like Jason's concept at the very beginning that we're having this conversation, and what we're really trying to do is get folks to join us and to boost the offshore wind conversation going forward. So I'm just very pleased to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. So next, Eric Hale. Eric, you're muted.
Damn that mute button. I'm Eric Hale. I'm a vice president with Power Engineers, and I'm also a substation engineer, electrical engineer by degree. And my focus, and the focus of a large chunk of my company, is power delivery, which basically starts at the terminals of any kind of generation and goes all the way into the transmission system and then to the end user at the other end of the distribution system. And so we do transmission lines, substations, and distribution networks, and the studies that go in behind them, including transmission planning. So I'm pretty well versed in all of that. And we do, as part of this, we're doing a lot of interconnects for renewable generation. So getting involved in offshore wind is a natural extension for that. It's an amazingly different environment once you enter into the marine world, and that's yet another fascinating thing. And actually, for me at least, and actually we don't, as a company, have a lot of experience in this. We really don't have any marine engineers on our staff, but it's still a really interesting thing for me, and I'm looking forward to being involved in this and involved in the discussion. I may come off at times as being a bit of a skeptic, but that really is coming from a point of view of the real nuts and bolts technical. How do you get the electrons to flow from point A to point B? So anyway, that's my perspective on it. I'm excited to be involved in this group. You guys are very different from the folks that I normally deal with, which in many ways is refreshing. And just looking forward to being part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Next is Josh Novacek.
Thanks, Bill. And hi, everyone. My name is Josh Novacek. I'm from the National Renewable Energy Lab. I've been here for about 6 years. Right now, we're wrapping up a offshore wind kind of integration study for the Oregon coast, which both Jason and Travis has contributed to as part of a technical working group and as reviewers. So thank you guys for that again while I have you. I'm looking forward to being part of the conversation here. I approach this from a systems perspective. I'm not an expert on offshore wind, just generally power systems operations and integration as we increase our penetration of wind and solar. I missed some of the end of the conversation. Actually had a power blip over here, so I had to reboot the computer and everything. So sorry, Steve, I missed the end of your presentation there and some of the comments that were coming around it. But there's definitely some unique system value to West Coast wind. There was a little bit of conversation about there, and I just wanted to kind of use a little bit of time here to chat about that. Fred was mentioning some of the reliability and kind of resource adequacy value of offshore wind. That's going to be particularly useful as we move towards higher and higher penetrations of wind and solar. And so really making sure that we're kind of capturing that understanding and that systems thinking as we're designing these plans, both kind of from the offshore wind perspective, but also how does that work with the rest of the system? Things are going to change really quickly over the next decade with lots of infrastructure investment. And so I think we just constantly keeping that in mind as we're making these plans and having this group to think about how to plan forward, as Jason mentioned, in an organized fashion. At least some type of coordination, I think, is incredibly valuable.
All right, thank you. And next is Craig Gannett.
Hi, my name is Craig Gannett, and I'm a energy and climate change lawyer with Davis Wright Tremaine in Seattle. Been at it in one form or another for decades. I'm a regulatory lawyer as opposed to a transactional lawyer. You do not want me buying and selling anything, but if you need permits on a complex project that needs federal, state, and local permits or some combination thereof, that's the kind of work I do, all in the renewable space. Years and years ago, I was senior counsel to the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, and part of my portfolio was oversight of the Bonneville Power Administration, institution for which I have great respect. And so I have some sense of how DC works, particularly the Northwest Congressional Delegation. And I would love to see the, Washington State and Oregon work together on this. In terms of my personal motivation, climate change. That's my North Star for the remainder of my career. Anything that I think is going to advance the fight against climate change, I'm in favor of, and anything that isn't moving in that direction, I'm not interested in. So I see offshore wind as a part of the solution to climate change that Washington, Oregon, and California can work together on. And anything I can do to help facilitate that, I'm all in. So anyway, I'm really, really pleased to be a part of this group and look forward to working together.
Thanks, Trey. And next, Eli Harlan.
Yep. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to meet everyone. Such a diverse set of expertise here, from the technical to the policy. It's great. I work at the California Energy Commission. I currently am an advisor to Commissioner Karen Douglas, who has sort of been the state's point person on offshore wind, which means she helps collaborate the state agencies and has really been an interface with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and is the state's lead for the intergovernmental task force that is set up by BOEM. There's a lot that everyone has already said as far as some of the opportunity here for offshore wind, also some of the big questions. I do think it's important for us to be skeptics sometimes, because that's how we get to asking the right questions and understanding how to take advantage of the opportunities. I will mention that, and for those who attended the last task force meeting back in early July, that the Energy Commission and some of the state agencies have recently been allocated funding in the state budget, which is a first time for offshore wind. And we're currently working through the implementation plan around some of those funds. And as that relates to some of the North Coast opportunities, there is some state funding that could potentially be used by the Harbor District in Humboldt for port upgrades. And we're also currently pursuing a potential grant with the Department of Defense to kind of do exactly what we're talking about here today, which is look at some of the subsea options and some of the potential for Oregon and California, and then as Fred pointed out, the broader WEC to tap into the resource on the map that's sort of lit up red, and the red means that it's a very valuable renewable resource. So Jason, appreciate you inviting the Energy Commission to participate, and hoping to sort of do my best to be an interface with some of our key state agencies, as well as the independent system operator.
Appreciate that, Eli. Let me just jump in real quick. Two conspicuous absentees here today: DOD and Bonneville Power Administration. Invitation was made to DOD. Steve Chung and I talked, Eli, and his admonition, I think, is well accepted, which is you don't want DOD joining anything because of the complexity and formality it brings to it. So he will be a part of this conversation. You know Steve well and know how important he and his team will be to the future of everything we're talking about here. And then Bonneville Power Administration, I think they're next in terms of bringing them to the table. I think they bring a little bit more skeptical lens, and we want to get our own house in order before we reach out to that third tier of participants.
Okay, thanks, Jason and Travis. And I think I'll note on one of our agendas for future meetings is to have updates to our group on activities going on in California and also in Oregon, and hopefully we can get, download some good information about the most recent stuff coming up. So with that, comment about BPA, we'll go to Larry Kitchen next.
My name is Larry Kitchen, and what I bring to this effort is my 39 years experience working for the Bonneville Power Administration. I'm currently retired right now. My work at BPA involved commercial contracting for BPA Power Services. I worked on regional requirements contracts, long-term marketing arrangements with California and Northwest investor-owned utilities, commercial aspects of the Canadian Treaty, and commercial arrangements surrounding the residential exchange program with the investor-owned utilities. My last 23 years at BPA were in Power Services bulk power marketing organization, first as an account executive, and then managing Power Services long-term purchase and sales organization. That organization, among other activities, managed BPA's renewable resource acquisition program and the purchase of transmission by Bonneville Power Services. Since I retired, I've been consulting with resource developers in the Pacific Northwest. I primarily provide insight on the culture of Northwest transmission providers. I've also consulted on the grandfathered transmission arrangements governing the Northwest AC intertie agreements. I hope to assist this group in assessing commercial opportunities for offshore wind on the California-Oregon border, and hope you come up with sort of a structure on how you can approach the different commercial structures of California and the Northwest.
All right, thanks, Larry. So next is Travis DeVille.
Yeah, hey everyone, it's great to be here with you today. I'm struck by the diversity and experience and disciplines in this group. So it's really great to be here, and it's a subject that I care a lot about. I am a energy systems research engineer with the Pacific Northwest National Lab in Portland, Oregon. And I have some recent work in offshore wind. My work is primarily focused in systems integration of renewables. And before I came to the laboratory, I worked for Vestas. So I know something about the wind, utility scale wind energy industry. And I'm really interested in evaluating a suite of benefits that can be provided through wind energy to rapidly evolving grids. I participated in a grid value study in Oregon on behalf of BOEM a little over a year ago. We have a pending study in this exact region that we've been talking about today, Northern California, Southern Oregon, that will be kicking off shortly, hopefully within the next month or so. And I'm also on a detail to the wind energy technology. I was specifically focusing on transmission. So this is definitely my wheelhouse. Really interested to learn from you all. I guess just in a few seconds, what I'm really interested in, some themes of that came up already in Fred and Josh's introductions in particular, but evaluating a suite of benefits. So not just energy, but the various contributions that can be provided through offshore wind and through transmission grids to society, and optimizing for that kind of all-in value. So shared transmission networks, coordinated transmission planning. I imagine some folks on this call have seen that FERC docket that was published in mid-July. The notice of proposed rulemaking. Those subjects, cost allocation. How do we plan across different owners of transmission, and how do we pay for it all? Those are kind of a few thoughts that are on the top of my head for this intro. But yeah, really looking forward to working with you all.
Thanks, Travis. Should be no problem to figure out who pays for it all. So next, Shannon Souza.
there. I'm here as your token female for the group, but I also am talking to you from the south coast of Oregon. The communities down here on this southern 100-mile stretch really are the poster children for those being hit first and hardest by climate change. And we also happen to be at the end of very long extension cords that supply us with the energy that we rely on. I serve on the Professional Engineers of Oregon board and represent them on the Governor's Resilience Mitigation Advisory Council. We have our own chapter in our state resilience plan for this neck of the woods, specifically because we're so at risk for major seismic events and catastrophes and energy disruptions. And we really don't have any of those needs met. So we have this ultimate, or this real urgency that we're certainly not going to be able to step up very urgently and meet. But I'm a huge fan of Travis and Drew's work, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Josh is going to become one of my heroes soon too, because when we realized that Oregon's existing transmission system could potentially accommodate between 2 and 3 gigawatts of offshore wind, both as a resilience measure for us, but also as a supersized non-wires solution that we've been talking about in our PUC proceedings. I also represent the Oregon's Solar and Storage Industry Association as their policy chair, and the potential for us to unlock some additional capacity for terrestrial renewables in the interior of Oregon is of tremendous importance as well. I'm the executive director for a new organization, though, OCEAN, Oregon Coast Energy Alliance Network, representing the coastal interests around floating offshore wind and other advanced technologies that we could use. So one of my interests here is knowing as much as I can about the state of the science, the viability, what needs to happen, what is it going to look like, so I can do a better job of working with our communities to advocate for the money and the resources that need to go into this design work. And fortunately, I'm also the policy director for POET, for working with Jason and his crew, which I'm really happy to do. And have been representing floating offshore wind in various energy planning and regulatory and legislative spaces in the Pacific Northwest. So again, want to know how I can do a better job of advocating for the funding and understanding what the next moves are so that we can make this happen. Really a pleasure to be working with all of you. And I'm a fellow engineer, so happy to see some other engineers on the call.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I'll follow up to add that one of my main interests in this is to really understand some of these connections between local interests and some of these potentially larger transmission facilities that we might want to be talking about, and how those can really intersect in ways that, you know, can have people want transmission lines as opposed to opposed transmission lines. Is a big interest of mine. So, and last but not least is Henry. I think Henry.
Thanks, Bill. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm Henry Tillman. I'm in Portland. I am an attorney by training. I started my second career as an analyst with Pacific Corp's trading floor. I worked as an attorney for Bonneville's transmission function. I managed the government relations team at Vestas. And for the last 12 years, I've been and had my own consulting shop supporting renewable energy developers and energy trade groups on a whole suite of transmission planning, market design, rate case topics throughout, basically, covering at times all of the Western interconnection, but more recently focusing just on the Pacific Northwest. I think the idea of a offshore transmission grid is potentially far easier and as well as potentially far more complicated than most of the people on this call can imagine. But I think it's certainly worth spending some time thinking about, talking about, educating people about, and we'll see where we get. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. So I think with that, we've all had, unless I missed somebody.
I don't know if Steve wanted to say anything. Steve
Thanks,
Johnson.
Steve.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm here. No, it's all fascinating to hear what all the different views are and what your different thoughts are. I'm here as someone to talk to. I enjoy the engineering on this side. Like I mentioned before, I've been supporting the work that Jason, Bill, and Eric have been doing. And if anybody wants to reach out to me on any of the technical issues, please do so. And I'll be able to talk things through what I'm seeing and the companies involved and the like. I mean, my skills is technology here, as you probably guessed. So I'm happy to discuss it anytime with anyone.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So we're right at time here. I'll turn it over to Jason for any final comments. We'll be having another meeting on a monthly basis. We're gonna try and go for this time on this week of the month on a monthly basis. And we'll be sending out agendas and also some meeting minutes typically, and we'll take it from there. That we'll be in communication as well between now and the next meeting. So, Jason, any final comments?
Yeah, thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for participating today. There's so many things that have come to mind while we've been talking here. Maybe what I'll ask of you is to keep your mind open about how you can see this organization, this group of people achieving our common goals. You've got the charter we sent you. I encourage you to look at that language and really think about what we said in there. We're looking to you to help guide the trajectory of this group. There are resources that need to be made available to you. We will be developing a website with a place you might be able to go to see materials that we reference or that are created. There's several aspects of this. There may be the need to have some subgroups in here, so maybe that are focused on the technology piece, maybe on the policy piece. There is the need to continue to look over the horizon in terms of what this group should be doing or what we're going to need to tackle and how we get to that point. So these are all questions that we will have to address moving forward and our opportunities. Everything is under development, and we're looking to you for input on that and good ideas and some help here and there. So at the least, we're asking you to read your materials and show up for our meetings and learn and engage, but perhaps there may be an additional level that you want to get involved. If there's a certain aspect that you want to sort of help lead on that you're interested in, it's a volunteer organization, right? So we appreciate that, and that's it for me.
Yeah, and we've got on our future agendas, we've got discussion of that charter, of a little bit deeper dive into what that looks like on our third meeting. And between now and then, any communications that you want to have, to the group or also, individually, we encourage that, and we'll see where that discussion goes in 2 months.
And I will say we have, I've written down September 15th is our next meeting. Normally it would be 1 month out, which would be the 22nd. That happens to be my annual conference. The Ocean Renewable Energy Conference is September 22nd, 23rd. So I wouldn't be able to join you that day. But if we want to do it a week before on the 15th, maybe we'll put that on the table and see how folks respond to that. That's it for me.
All right. Well, we're at time, so we'll end the call. If anyone has any final comment, we can open that up, or we can end the call right now.
I've got one quick. Oh, go ahead, Eric. I've got one quick comment on just to follow up on the 22nd that ORAC, we do have a wonderful panel earlier that day that's relevant to this conversation that's talking about the role of ocean energy in the Pacific Northwest clean energy future. And Fred Hewitt will be on that call, but we'll also have the modelers. Drew will be participating on the grid value of offshore wind, as well as the modelers from Evolve Energy, whose recent work on the clean energy pathways for Oregon, we're calling up about 20 gigawatts of Oregon offshore wind by 2045. So that will be an interesting panel that might be of interest to you. If you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you.
20 gigawatts.
20 gigawatts. All right. Anyone else? All right. Gone. Thank you all very much. Take care. You'll hear from us soon. I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Nice to
Bye.
talk to you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.